Hi, folks. I'm Peter Lemieux. Uh, I'm with Rounding Third of BadderSports. I tell baseball stories. Sometimes my baseball stories go back in time. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to go back in time to learn a little bit about baseball history, about our history as a country, and where the greatest player of 85 came into prominence. That's not 1985. 1885. So just to give you a perspective, 1885 is like 150 years ago. Our star player of the 1880s, his father fought in the Civil War in the Union Army. When that ended, he moved the family up to Paterson, New Jersey. But more about our prominent player in a minute. First, let's figure out what life was like in 1880s. My friends, do you know that electricity wasn't used in the 1880s? It didn't become used in homes till around 1925. So we're talking about a society that didn't even have electricity as common to them. And the baseball game, significantly different than what we do today. It's still baseball. And the beauty of the game of baseball, evolving to where it is today, started in open fields. You ever wonder why it's called a ball field? That's how it started. There were no bleachers, there were no fences. It was an open field, and people would come out to watch these guys play baseball. It wasn't until the mid 1880s that the first professional league was even declared, the National League. Okay, now a couple other things. When they played the game in the 1880s, nobody wore gloves. They caught the ball barehanded. Gloves were seen as a sign of weakness. By the mid 80s, they started to become more popular with catchers. But the glove they used was like a racing glove we have today. It was kind of leather that went over the hand, but the fingers were exposed. It just took the sting away from catching the ball. Most players refused to wear them because they said, as I said before, a sign of weakness. Um, they became more commonplace as the game evolved with faster pitching and harder hit balls, but they still were not the kind of gloves we use today. Um, Doug Allison is credited to be the first person to wear a glove due to a hand injury. There was a guy by the name of Albert Spalding. Sound familiar? Spalding? Yep. He was a pitcher and a sporting's good businessman. He helped popularize gloves because he made them and sold them along with other things. And by the time we got into the 90s, gloves became more commonplace, but it took a while to become the kind of gloves we use today. Now to my story. Way back in the 1880s, the most popular player was a guy named Michael Kelly. So popular, he was called King Kelly by the people who watched them. He was really declared the first celebrity of baseball. As I said, his family moved to Paterson, New Jersey after the Civil War. His father died as a young man. His mother died. When his mother died, Michael Kelly became an 18-year-old orphan. At the time, he was working in a silk factory, providing for himself. But he would go out on the weekends and play baseball. And he was pretty popular. He had a great personality. He had leadership abilities, so he could gather the players around him and things like that. And so Michael Kelly became popular. And Teams to hire him. He was very versatile. He played lots of positions, but primarily he was a catcher and an outfielder. He was a great hitter and an exceptional base runner, leading what became the National League in batting average and stolen bases during his career. Michael Kelly regularly would steal over 50 bases in a season, and their seasons weren't very long, okay? Um, he stole 84 bases in one season and 6 bases in a game. So the way he played the game was so exciting. He was a player manager 3 times because of his leadership ability. But let me go back to the beginning. He signed a contract with the Cincinnati Red Stockings, and he played with them for a couple of years. He was touring the West Coast with the stars of the Red Stockings and the Chicago White Stockings, trying to popularize baseball in California, when he got notice that Cincinnati was no longer going to pay him or anyone else because the team had no more money. Michael had become friends with Albert Spalding, who owned the Chicago White Stockings, and he immediately offered Michael a contract. So Michael moves from Cincinnati to Chicago. That was a great place at the time for baseball because the trains all came into Chicago and people would get off the trains, and quite often they would go watch games. Michael Kelly was, as I said, a great hitter, a great base runner, led the league in runs scored. I mean, this is some of the what we have records of. In one season, he scored 120 runs. Another season, he scored 124. Another season, he scored 155. Now, one of the things that made Michael so important to baseball, like the evolution of anything, the rules were not real clear. So Michael would bend rules, okay? He would try creative things until they said, whoa, we can't do that. But for example, Michael Kelly, called King Kelly, invented the hook slide, we would call it, okay? Where what he would do is he would slide to the side of the base and hook the base with his foot. Popularly used for a long time, but at the time, that allowed him to get under tags and steal more bases. In fact, there was a popular song made at the time called Slide Kelly Slide. So we could credit him with bringing that slide to baseball. Now, there were some other things he did that weren't legal. They only had one umpire. So what Kelly would do when the play was in the outfield or something is he would just run from first to third and never touch second base. The umpire didn't see it, but it allowed him to get the extra bases. He, what they call, cut the bases. And when he got caught, of course, he got thrown out of the game, but he would do things like that during the game. Also, they hadn't made up the rule of when you could substitute people. So he substituted himself when he was a manager during a play. Story goes like this. There was a foul ball. The catcher wasn't going to catch it. So he yelled to the umpire, "I'm in for the catcher," ran out to the field and caught the foul ball. The batter was out, substituting himself in the middle of the play. So he had these exciting things. Plus, he was an exciting player. When you're leading the league in batting and stolen bases and runs scored, it was great. So popular that the Boston Bean Eaters wanted him in Boston. So they offered Albert Spalding the incredible amount of $10,000. Now remember, none of this money goes to King Kelly, but Spalding accepted the offer and sent Kelly to Boston, where he became known as the $10,000 man. $10,000 back then was a lot of money. Unfortunately, Kelly never got that. In fact, Kelly made hardly any money playing baseball. At one point, The friends of Kelly, because of his great popularity, kicked money together and bought him what was called a mansion for $10,000, something Kelly could never afford. But he got it because of his popularity. It was kind of like the equivalent of being on Facebook and asking for money, okay? But people kicked in. The problem was that was like in 1890 when he got the house. In 1893, King Kelly lost his house because he had $123 of back taxes on the property that he could not afford to pay. When his career ended, Kelly, because of his popularity, took to vaudeville and being in plays. He acted in plays. People loved to come and watch him. In fact, one of the interesting things he did to entertain people is he would recite Casey at the Bat. You guys all know the poem of Casey at the Bat. Many people at the time thought that Casey was really representative of Kelly himself. But he would come out and recite that. People would pay money to come and hear Kelly recite Casey at the Bat. How it all ended. Michael Kelly died at the age of 36 from pneumonia. He caught pneumonia taking a boat ride to a part of New York City to perform at the Palace Theater with, get this name, the London Gaiety Girls. And Michael Kelly were putting on a show. Michael got pneumonia and died at the age of 36. He had an open casket, and 7,000 people passed by that casket. So popular was King Kelly. His widow needed money because Michael never made much. So the owners of the National League, not known as being generous people, kicked in $1,400 to give his widow, which today would be like 50 grand. She died 43 years later. As far as I can tell, she never remarried. But she has an interesting quote about Michael. She said, "To me, Mike was just an overgrown kid, always eager to help a young player on the field and charitable to an extreme. Baseball recognized King Kelly in 1945. They put him into Cooperstown in the Baseball Hall of Fame." So, in short, King Kelly helped start what we know is the popularity of baseball. You need heroes to get popularity. In the 1880s, King Kelly was a baseball hero, a $10,000 man. Doesn't mean much to us today with all our technology and sophistication and watching the pitchers on an iPad between at bats. But it all started in a field with a bunch of men who just loved the game. So much they would play without gloves. And the best of the bunch was King Kelly. So, tribute to Michael King Kelly. Now we know a lot more about the history of our game. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Like, subscribe, give me comments. What do you know about the old days that makes you have a smile on your face? Talk to you soon. This is Peter Lemieux with BadderSports and Rounding Third. Have a great day. Watch baseball. It's good for your life. See you later.